Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be a beginner/basics guide for counterattack, so let's get into it. Alrighty, counterattack is one of the strongest abilities in the game. It's also very complicated and requires a very specific setup to make it work optimally. So I'll probably do multiple videos on counterattack. This is going to be the first installment of me diving into the counterattack topic. So this is going to be a basics guide, and then I will also do more advanced guides where we dive into like the super end game optimized stuff, because otherwise this video would be like an hour long if I tried to cover everything in one video. So this is going to be more geared towards the people who are curious, you know, what is counterattack, how does it work, and just kind of covering all of the basics so that you can understand it. So we're going to be going over what is counterattack, how does counterattack work, why is it good, how to build a counterattack team, examples of counterattack champions, and where is it best to take advantage of counterattack. So first of all, counterattack needs a very specific style/build in order to shine properly. You know, a funny story, I'm currently working on a 5-video series with Clash with Ash, who is a, you know, he's been a mobile gamer, you know, YouTuber, mainly for Clash Royale. He's been, you know, making videos for many years. He is thinking of switching over to Raid Shadow Legends, so he's doing a 5-video series. But long story short, I've been kind of coaching him and working on him with some of these videos to introduce him to Raid. And he pulled Skull Crusher in one of his summoning sessions that we were doing, and I was super excited. I was like, wow, you got Skull Crusher, who is an epic and is, you know, very good in terms of providing counterattack to your team. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. So, you know, he comes back like the next week and he's like, hey, you know, you told me Skull Crusher was good. I'm not really feeling it. I don't understand what you see in this and why it's so good. And I was kind of laughing because, yeah, you know, I remember feeling the same way. It seems underwhelming until you get to the mid/end game and you really start to build a proper team to take advantage of counterattack. But in the early game, when you don't really know what's going on and you don't set it up to perform properly in a specific dungeon, in a specific situation, counterattack is not going to seem very good. So it's one of those things that's not amazing early game, but it's one of the best abilities in the game for late game. So it's kind of cool in that regard, as there's a little bit of skill cap to it, and it takes a little bit of time to get it, you know, snowballing and working properly. So how does counterattack work? Since I've got Skull Crusher pulled up, I will go over it here. We can see this Stonewall ability is place a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places a counterattack buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn. So we can see place counterattack on all allies except this champion. What that means is the counterattack buff is this little, you know, double pointed sword icon, and how it's going to work is when a champion has that buff live, if they get attacked, they will counterattack whoever hit them. So, like, you know, if you have this up on your whole team and somebody hits you with an AoE ability, you will have all members of your team, all 5 people of your team, boom, slam that champion that just attacked them with their default skill. So obviously, we can see this would be very good against like the Fire Knight and the Clan Boss, and versus bosses that hit you with AoE. Now you have your whole team use their default ability. Now, when a champion counterattacks, they will always use their A1 or, you know, default skill, their ability that has no cooldown. They'll never use like a special ability like an A2 or an A3 that has a cooldown. They will only use their first ability listed, which is called their default or A1. Now, this is obviously better if you have champions that have really good A1s. If you have champions that apply debuffs as with their A1, or if they attack all enemies, you know, do a lot of damage with their A1. Those are going to be the champions that perform best in a counterattack scenario. So typically you'll see champions like, you know, if for like a clan boss situation or something, you'll see champions like a Tyrell has a really good A1. It's going to be attacking one enemy twice and placing a 50% decrease attack. So a very strong multi-hit that places a very valuable debuff. So Tyrell would be very good with a counterattack setup because he has a very impactful A1. So when you're setting up a counterattack team, you're looking for champions that have a very impactful default skill, and lots of their value as a champion is tied up in their A1 or default. That's going to be your champions that are going to perform best in a counterattack team. So now diving into a little bit more of how it works is typically to get counterattack to perform properly, you need to set up a very specific turn order. And one thing I do want to cover while it's kind of fresh in my mind is, a lot of people make the mistake of using these masteries that mess up your turn meter. And, when you're doing counterattack, like I said, you want a very specific turn rotation. I'll explain why. But so you want to avoid masteries like Arcane Celerity and Rapid Response because they manipulate your turn meter and cause like buffs to turn meter, which can screw up your rotation of counterattack. So that's a mistake that lots of people make, is they get those masteries thinking, well, boosting my turn meter is good, but it actually can be harmful when you're trying to keep a very specific turn rotation with a counterattack team. You also want your counterattack champion, the person who places your counterattack, to go last. So like, I'll give you an example here. In my clan boss team, I can't really load it without buying a key. That's okay. And I might want to show something anyway just for a test. So with my clan boss team, we'll see Martyr is my counterattack champion. And the way I want to set up my speeds is for Martyr to go last in my rotation. So, I want like Bad L to be my fastest. And then, Dracomorph and Crypt King and Jareg, whatever. We want those four to go before my Martyr. Then Martyr goes last and places counterattack on the whole team. Now, the reason I don't want Martyr to go, first is because if she goes first and places counterattack on all my allies, then my allies go after her and they burn a turn of counterattack, getting no value out of it. So you want the person placing your counterattack to be like one speed lower than your lowest champion. So let's say, Crypt King is 194 speed. I want my Martyr to ideally be like 193 speed to keep up with my team, but go last. That's kind of how you set up your counterattack champion so that you can get a proper rotation and get the most amount of turns as possible without wasting your counterattack procs, the buff number above each champion's head. Now, best options for counterattack is going to be, I believe you get Jizo as a reward at like 14 days or something when you're a new player. This will be your first introduction to counterattack as a new player. Jizo has this ability here. Place a counterattack buff on 2 turns on 1 ally, grant an extra turn. So this is your first introduction guaranteed to counterattack. And then there's also farmable in the campaign. We have the Executioner. Executioner has this Shillatron ability where it places an increased defense buff and a counterattack buff on this champion for 3 turns. Pretty strong ability for the early game. Executioner is a pretty widely used early game champion because of this ability. His damage is based on defense, and this Shillatron will increase his defense and give him counterattack, which means he'll use his default skill and place stun, which is pretty good. So this is why Executioner is thought of to be kind of a good champion for beginners, and just like Jizo, is kind of one of your first introductions to the game in terms of counterattack. Now, as you get towards the later stages of the game, you will see people using Skull Crusher is an epic that is really known for the Stonewall ability that is pretty good, and it's going to place counterattack buff on all of his allies besides him. And then in the super late game, if you are lucky, you will get the 2 best counterattack champions in the game, which is Valkyrie, this legendary barbarian that has this ability here, Stand Firm, that places a shield and a counterattack on the entire team for 2 turns. And then thought of to be, arguably the best legendary in the game is Martyr, who has this Bastion of Faith, which places a 60% increased defense buff and a counterattack buff on all allies for 2 turns. So you've got kind of Martyr and Valkyrie that are thought of to be the best counterattack champions in the game. Then you take a step down, Skull Crusher, a very good counterattack champion, and then your kind of introductory are going to be Jizo and Executioner for beginners to dive in and use that counterattack ability. So I do, on a side tangent, I do hope they add more counterattack champions to the game. It's going to be very hard for, you know, most players to get access to Martyr and Valkyrie. I think we need a couple more rare and epic options in terms of counterattack. You know, it shouldn't be just Skull Crusher. There should be a couple more epics on a few different more factions to help players, you know, be able to experience that part of the game without having to just rely on getting one of those 3 endgame champions. With there being, you know, 350 or 400 champions, there should be a few more that bring counterattack to your roster, in my opinion. Now, where is counterattack best? Okay, so it's most famously used in the Fire Knight and the Clan Boss. The Fire Knight has an ability where you have to hit his shield a certain amount of times, and this is very strong because the Fire Knight attacks you with AoE. So when he hits your team and you use champions that have a multi-hit A1, they're going to counterattack and hit his shield multiple times and break it. So counterattack is extremely strong in the Fire Knight, and it's very tough to complete these later stages of the Fire Knight without having, you know, a Skull Crusher or a Martyr or a Valkyrie to, you know, provide that counterattack for your whole team. It is doable, but counterattack makes it much easier. Counterattack is also very widely used in the end game for the Clan Boss. And one thing I do want to point out in the Clan Boss and counterattack in general is, okay, say your whole team has counterattack. They will attack in a very specific order. So it will go first by the leader, then it will go up, down, up, down. So if my whole team has counterattack and my team gets hit by an AoE attack, Jareg will attack first, then Crypt King, then Martyr, then Bad Alcazar, then Dracomorph. And it's going to work like that every time. As long as they all have a counterattack buff, it starts with leader and then goes up, down, down. And I can kind of show you this in action. But so what does that mean? Why is that important? So in situations like the Clan Boss, where we can only place a certain amount of debuffs, we want our most valuable debuffs to go first. If you have somebody like a Steel Skull that's going to be placing poisons with their A1, you want your decreased attack to go first before your Skull Crusher. So the order you would set them up here, you'll notice I have my 2 attack down champions going first, and they're going to hit with that counterattack and make sure that I have a permanent decreased attack buff on the Clan Boss. So when I show you this in action, when that first rotation of counterattack comes through, you'll watch it will go Jareg, Crypt King, Martyr, Bad Alcazar, and then Dracomorph. So let's see it in action here and show you how it works. Okay, so remember, I'm going to have Martyr on the far left here is my counterattack champion, which means I want her to have the closest amount of speed to, you know, my team, but going last. So I have her at like 192, 193 speed, and everybody else is like 195 to 205, somewhere in there. So she's going to go last, and then she will place a counterattack buff on my whole team. Boom, there you see. She went last. Now, everybody has 2 turns of counterattack, and you will see it goes Jizo, then Crypt King, then Martyr, then Battle, then Dracomorph. That was exactly what I said would happen, and it goes in that order. It starts with the leader, then it goes up, down, and that can enable you to really, you know, get your rotation set up how you want it. So, yeah, that's going to kind of do it for this video and, you know, kind of covering the basics of counterattack and exactly how it works. So I will have more videos coming out where I really dive in to the end game mechanics and how to really, you know, take advantage of it in the Clan Boss and the Fire Knight and kind of, you know, the right comps and teams to, you know, think about using. But this was a very widely requested video that I wanted to get out there just to kind of introduce people to counterattack and exactly how it works. So yeah, if you have any questions, drop it down in the comments. I'll do my best to help you out. So as always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.